Hello, Stellar people, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Trey, and today we will continue our month-long practice of inking. And today's character will be Fatal of the HBH Project, Heaven Between Hell. Now, last week we started with Dog, our main lead character, the older version and then the younger version. But today we are focusing on Fatal. So to start, my inking always starts from a sketch. I either do the sketch in Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint or just on regular paper, but I try to get as tight of pencils of the character before I start inking, because it saves me a whole lot of trouble later on. My own personal inking process has 3 phases: the outline phase, then moving into the ink wash or then to spot inks, and then finally detailing and corrections, which is with a whiteout or whiteout pen. But let's start off with the outlining. Outlining is usually one of my slowest and longest process parts because I try to be the most careful at this stage, because I feel like if I don't get a good outline of the drawing, then it's just it's a wash. So I try to take it slow, take it easy, focus. This is where I'm pretty much the most focused in the inking process. And I always move from upper left to lower right, so I don't drag my hand through wet ink as I'm prone to do and ruin a piece. So I always try to keep that in mind. Upper left, lower right. And again, we're doing just the outlining, and we'll work on the fine details, ink washes, and all of that later. So I try to get in as much as I can in one sitting. Sometimes it takes multiple sittings, but it depends on how complicated the piece is, how detailed, how refined, and all of that. But this one's fairly simple, and so I'm just going in and going for it. Also, since this is a nice, crisp, thicker paper on top of my drawing sheet, sometimes some details can get lost. So I try to keep that in mind and take it slow and easy. And sometimes I have a piece of paper off to the side with the full image so that I can check on it to make sure I'm adding the necessary elements into it. Also, because the face and head area is usually where the audience will pay the most attention, that is also where I try to put the most focus and slow my process down so I can get all the finer details and not feel too rushed. Because if I can get the face right, again, I feel I'm doing not so bad overall. Once the face is done, then I feel like I can take a breath and it should be all fairly smooth sailing for the rest. But I always, I could probably get into danger thinking like that. But, the hardest part, I feel the job is over and I can move on to the rest. Now, the reason that she's called Fatal is because in this cyberpunk world, cyberpunk stories, which I hear are based off of or got their start from film noir stories, where there is a femme fatale and usually a detective. And so I combine those two things into one character. And usually to end the first day of inking, I have the whole total outline done. And then I let it sit and dry for as short as 20 minutes to about a day, usually. So on the start of the second day, I do more detailing and things that I might have forgotten. It's, I think, always good to take a look at your artwork at a later date, just to fact check yourself, and you'll always notice little things that you didn't notice before. So try to take your time with whatever you're doing art-wise. But this is a start of some short detailing phase, but I'm just trying to catch everything I didn't catch before. And usually by the end of the second day, I start to have the character down, and then we can move on to the second phase of ink washes and spot inks. Now with the ink wash and spot ink phase, it is fun, but also slightly dangerous. As I use washes, ink bleeds, and spot blacks to make my darks. But sometimes it can get a little bit out of control, or for me. So I have to try to control it because ink can go sometimes do what it wants and cover things you don't want it to cover, or sometimes I just make mistakes. But that's what correction fluid's for. So I try to just have fun with it and do whatever I feel is right at the time. But hey, I'm always trying to learn. So just have fun. And the second area I wanted an ink wash / bleed was for the pants. So I'm doing an ink wash, and then we go over that with some spot black inks, but it makes it just slightly duller. Just, it softens it just a little bit, and that's kind of what I wanted for this character. Then finally, after all of that, it's time for the detailing and correction phase. This phase can be either long and intense or short, depending on how it went. It all depends. But for Fatal, she has messy hair, and so that I kind of like the look of that. But there's a lot of little things that I try to tighten up, especially on the face, because that's where the audience usually looks. So especially in the eyes and just the head in general, I try to give it a lot more care than everything else. And that's where I usually start and put the most emphasis on. So detailing can be anything small that I don't feel quite confident enough to get with a brush. So I use a pen, and that can be eyelashes, eye detail, strands of hair, shadows, and details on the clothing and equipment. But it can be pretty much anything that I don't feel like I can get with a brush. So I do it with these tiny, tiny pens. Now I usually end with the whiteout fluid or correction pens. Like I have a Jelly Roll pen that's white, and for the hair I want to do some individual hair strands just to punch that up a little bit. And anything that I feel needs to be corrected, adjusted, or if there's, ink that has gotten into places where it shouldn't be, I try to tighten that up at this phase, which is usually my final phase. And I kind of have fun with this phase because it seems like it tightens it up, makes it pop a little bit more, sharpens it, I guess, and also removes some of my mistakes. So that's something. And that was the brief overview of my inking process. Have Dog on the left and Fatal on the right. Not bad. So thank you for joining me. Take care, keep shining. I've been Trey. You can find my work at treyhodges.com. And I will see you on the next video where we will be doing Kerberos, the cyborg. Until then, see you next time. Later.